Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for an oral history interview with the William and Mary Bray School Lab. Please state your name and today's date.
Devin Canaday, July 11th, 2024. Grew up in Williamsburg my whole life until I went off to school. Did a double major in mechanical aerospace engineering and then moved up to the Baltimore area. Was there for about 10 and a half years in the Maryland area and then came back home. Wanted to get the family back closer to family so they can get a chance to grow up with cousins and uncles and aunts the same as I did. And worked in education for several years, worked at Colonial Williamsburg for almost 10 years. That transitioned into an engineering role where I designed and modeled radar systems that went onto different platforms between undersea to outer space. So I enjoyed that life, supporting our service members. And then transitioned to now my own business where I do education consulting, primarily working with teachers in different capacities, whether it's K-12 up through academia, largely training teachers on how to improve their educational delivery, to build the mind of an engineer.
Can you talk to us about the Canaday family in Williamsburg?
The Canaday family in Williamsburg. Everybody knows the Canadays in some capacity. To bring it right where it's supposed to be, everybody knows Adam. But in terms of our family, historically, we've been in the Williamsburg area in some capacity for years. I had a cousin who tracked part of our family history back down to 1638, 1639. My mom has been able to trace parts of our lineage to the free population of blacks in Williamsburg, as well as being enslaved at the Ludwell property. So we have that combination of representation in our history. There are some members of my family from the Canaday side that are still connected to Chickahominy with the biannual family reunion that goes on. So there's so many aspects of who we are that is part and parcel of what Williamsburg is. Communities are always important, always been a big deal, and especially in a community that has been under distress historically. Still dealing with certain aspects, many things that are, you can point the finger at where it's coming from, right? Mm-hmm. However, having something like the Bray School, where it's a physical building that you can step into, you can look around, you can emotionally put yourself back into as much as you can to what was happening at that time. You can put yourself back into that space from a mental perspective. You can put yourself back in that space from an ancestral perspective. You can look at the educational norms, and so many people will look at different aspects of it. The one thing I would say though is, and this is not to take away from it, it's still a building. And I say that because so often we will hear when the narrative becomes something that's a sensitive subject, i.e. slavery, it becomes a focus of, oh, look at the architectural structure of the building, or look at how they laid this out. Oh, stop. Let's put the people back in here first. Let's celebrate and recognize what they overcame or the opportunity that they were able to take advantage of, and how it was a significant impact to the community, or was it a significant? I mean, ask the question at a minimum before we determine whether it is or was not. However, I've seen too often the attempt when it comes to the historical representation of the truth has been to, oh, great, let's look right here, right? And it's, we're at the Bray School. Oh, look at how they built this here. Stop. That's not why we're here. That's a great part of the conversation, but it's not the real core of the conversation. So let's get back to the core of the conversation. Let's think about the students that were in this place. And I say students because, yeah, they were children, they were enslaved, and I say enslaved, not slaves. I say they were enslaved, and they were in the capacity of a student. So let's talk about the students who were here. And let's talk about the significance of what the students were dealing with and facing. And then what was the expectation when they went back home? Did their parents say, oh, you learned this? Oh, what did you learn? Okay, walk me through that too. We don't know per se, but we can put together the story. We can start to think about, again, people are people are people are people. And if there are certain things that we seek to this very day, why would we not expect that people saw the same things in the same kind of capacities based on the cultural norms and what society offered at that time, that you could expect the same way? When we think about the history of the Bray School, we need to think about not so much the Bray School as a building, but the Bray School as an opportunity that was afforded to a populace, which was a subset of the populace, which then in and of itself brings even more questions like, well, who were these kids? Why were they selected for this particular opportunity or experiment? Right? So there are so many different aspects that have to be uncovered to really paint the entire picture. But to that end, I think it's important to the community. I think it's a tangible, solid space that we can anchor around to start the conversation. But I also want to be very mindful that we don't allow ourselves to get sidetracked and replace the core of the conversation with something that's not really the part and parcel core of what we should be focused on.